Choosing Love by ginnyrules27, Chapter 18. Ben smiled as he made his way down the hall to where his parents, Chip, Genevieve and Mal's family, and some of the closest members of the castle staff, had congregated upon Ben's request. They had known that today was the day that Mal was going to get her ultrasound done. That this was the day they were going to learn if they were going to have a son or a daughter. In all honesty, Ben didn't care that much about whether or not he had a son. He'd spent way too much time around Lonnie, Mal, Jane and his own mother to think girls were somehow less than boys. All he cared about was that the child in question was healthy and happy, as was their mother. And their mother, at that moment, was currently in the process of drawing herself a bath to relax, as they'd gotten some rather startling news. Instead of one baby, they were going to be having two. Twins! We're having twins! Ben thought with a grin, glancing down at the envelope in his hand, which held the scans that Mal had had not half an hour ago. She'd begun panicking at the thought of twins, and Ben wasn't going to lie. He was more than a bit nervous as well, but he knew they could handle it. They had an amazing support system, as shown by their families. Oh God, I can just picture it if we're going to have a boy and a girl. A mini Mal running around the castle. A mini me curled up with Mal as he reads with her, Ben thought, a smile growing on his lips. Not that he wouldn't have loved having two daughters or two sons, of course, but a son and daughter combo was what they had talked about the most. It was what they, or at least Ben, felt the most prepared for. He wasn't going to lie. As he continued to walk, he had to stamp down the temptation to take a peek at the sonogram, to see the gender of his kids. But they were also Mal's kids, and he wasn't going to open the envelope without Mal. They had wanted to know. That was the whole point of the visit from Alethea. Since Mal wanted to keep the knowledge away from the prying eyes and ears of the press, for as long as they were able to do so, hospital visits had been done via house call. Of course, this had also strengthened Mal's belief that they were having the baby in the castle. Ben was happy to do whatever Mal wanted, but that was the one thing he really wanted to put his foot down for, though Mal would often agree that her mother had given birth to Hattie at home and she had been fine. I can't help but wonder if finding out we're having twins will change Mal's mind on the whole giving birth at home thing, Ben thought as they walked into the living room, where everyone was gathered. Thank you guys for coming, Ben said, grinning, as he saw Jean and Ray were in the corner curled up with Estelle. Actually, it almost looked like his sister and sister-in-law were napping and using Estelle as a pillow, but the Cerberus seemed not to mind in the one bit. Of course, Your Highness, Lumiere said, giving Ben a smile which the king returned. As you know, Mal had her sonogram done to check the baby's gender, as well as to confirm that nothing was going wrong with the pregnancy. After all, we've been concerned about how quickly the baby has been growing, even with the smaller gestational period Mal has, due of being both a fae and a godling. Are there any issues? Belle asked, the worry evident in her eyes. Ben shook his head, his smile growing to dizzy levels. No, but there is a reason for the rapid growth. Instead of one heir to the throne, we're going to have two. Mal's having twins. Oh, that's great news, son, Beast said as Chip rushed over to gather Ben up in a hug. Congratulations. Thanks, Dad, Ben said. Hattie grinned. 2 nieces or 2 nephews or one of each of them for me to spoil and be the fun uncle to? Awesome! That's my role, Chip exclaimed as he released Ben. Oh, Lucas is sorry he couldn't make it. He has a deadline to meet. Ben shook his head. I'm not offended at all, Chip. I know how important deadlines are. But he's meeting his nieces or nephews or niece and nephew. I'll drag him to the hospital myself, Chip nodded. Or is Mal still insisting on a home birth? That's still a contender, but I think this news might change her mind, Ben said. Hades frowned from his seat. No one but Persephone had noticed him sinking down into a chair at the news. Speaking of which, where is Mal? In our ensuite, Ben said. She's running herself a bubble bath. I was just about to get her some chocolate-covered strawberries, since she's feeling more than a little overwhelmed. But I thought you guys should get the news first.
Persephone shook her head. Mal feeling overwhelmed is completely understandable. To go from thinking you were expecting 1 child to 2, though with Hades' family tree, it was always a possibility. Apollo and Artemis are the obvious examples, but there's also Castor and Pollux, Helen and Clytemnestra, Amphion and Zethus. Oddly enough, they're all connected to Zeus in some way.
It's not that odd. Hades shook his head. But we're not here to dive into my family's history. We're here to celebrate the fact that Mal's having 2 sunspots instead of 1.
You're taking this awfully well, Hades, Persephone said, and Hades was thankful she hadn't mentioned the fact that he was the only one sitting, though he was sure she would tease him for that when they were alone.
Hades chuckled. He's ranting over the mental link again. Dad, you're about as good as Mal is with the link. Everyone's a critic.
Hades shook his head. Belle chuckled softly before looking over at her son. Then, let me know if you need me to watch the kids at any point, she said. I'm more than happy to help. Same with me, Persephone nodded, a small smile gracing her lips.
Thanks, Mum, Lady Persephone,
Ben said. Beast rested a hand on his son's shoulder.
Do you know the genders of the babies? After all, you said that was the main reason for the visit today.
Ben sighed and shook his head.
Lady Alethea gave me an envelope with the genders revealed in the sonogram, but I haven't looked yet. I want to do that with Mal. I mean, I know we should know if we're having 2, but it doesn't feel right looking without Mal here. I can agree with that, Beast nodded.
Belle chuckled. I had insisted on knowing when I was pregnant with you, Ben.
Ben couldn't help but chuckle as he heard that. It didn't surprise him at all.
You're having a party without me? Mal's voice called from the doorway.
You are supposed to be relaxing, Ben told her as he turned to his wife, a smile on his face.
Mal shook her head. Well, I was drawing the bath, but I figured I'd want to see someone take so long with the chocolate he'd promised, she teased as she walked over to Ben.
I'll go ahead and get that right now, dearie, Mrs. Potts promised.
Oh, no, Mrs. Potts, I didn't mean... And she's gone.
Mal sighed as Mrs. Potts got up and left. Chip chuckled. You really expected Mom to just sit by when you asked for something?
Good point. I don't know what I was thinking. We'll just chalk it up to pregnancy rain.
Mal chuckled before looking over at Ben.
So, I take it that everyone's been informed about the change in the number of expected children?
Ben nodded with a small chuckle. Congratulations, Mal, Persephone said as she walked over to give her daughter a hug.
Thanks, Mum,
Mal told her, leaning into the hug. Hades shook his head. So, now that Mal's here, are you going to open that envelope so Chip and I can know if we're expecting 2 nephews, or 2 nieces, or 1 of each?
I love how Rhea and Jean aren't included in the aunt and uncle category.
Mal snorted. And that might be something they'd want to do in private, Hades said as he looked over at his son. After all, Mal and the Sunspot got so little in the way of privacy now that he wouldn't begrudge them the little they could get.
Mal shrugged. I mean, it's not like you guys are reporters. You're going to find out anyway.
Mal's right, Ben nodded as Mrs. Potts came in over with a tray. Here you are, dearie, she said, setting the tray down in front of Mal. Now sit down, both of you. You've had a long day and some rather shocking news. I'm surprised you're still on your feet. Mum, what did we say about mothering the 23-year-olds? Chip chuckled. Oh, hush you. You're 32 and I'll happily mother you. Mrs. Potts shook her head but gave her youngest son a smile. Ben chuckled as he helped Mal sit down at the table before taking a seat himself and pulling out the envelope. Are you ready? Mal nodded and began nibbling a bit on one of the chocolate-covered strawberries, as Ben slowly opened the envelope and pulled out the results for him and Mal to look at. Looks like we got our wish, Mal said softly as she smiled and looked at Ben. 1 of each. Persephone smiled. Oh, how wonderful! This truly is exciting. A little prince and It's us running around the castle, Mrs. Potts said, though if anyone looked at her closely, they could tell that the smile had a hint of sadness to it. After all, other than Beast, she had been the one to see the effects the miscarriage had had on Belle. How much she had wanted a daughter, and how devastated losing Abigail had been on the Queen. I'm so happy for you both, Belle said, her voice soft, but her smile was almost at dizzy levels, as she walked over and gave Ben and Mal a hug. Mal returned the hug, but then looked over at her husband.
Ben, we never did tell them what the name we wanted to use on the pup for a girl was, did we?
You told Uma, I believe, but no, we never told our parents, Ben said, shaking his head.
Oh, right, that reminds me I'll have to tell Uma about the whole twin thing, Mal said, but that can be later.
Hades chuckled. Pregnancy brain getting to you, Molly? Come on, spill. What's the name?
Mal and Ben looked at each other and smiled, before Mal looked back at her parents. For the boy, we're going to go with our first pick of Maurice Benjamin Adam. And for the girl, we're going with Stephanie Isabel Haley.
We wanted to make sure all the grandparents were getting included, Ben said as Hades tilted his head in confusion.
Persephone, however, gasped in realization, as her mind flashed back to a conversation she had had with Mal before Haddie was born, about what name they could use if Haddie had been a girl.
Haley? For Hades?
It's not the best, I'll admit, but it was the best we could come up with, Mal said with a small smile. As for Stephanie, well, that was Ben's idea. We wanted to name her after you, Mum, but as history has shown, favouring one god over another ends in chaos. So we figured, since your nickname is Steph... Brilliant! Hades exclaimed. What's brilliant? Rhea said as she looked over at them. Your sister, of course.
Your sister, of course,
Haddie said as he walked over and scooped Rhea up into his arms. Oh, why is she brilliant? Mal chuckled. I just am. It's the perk of being the eldest, you know.
Yeah, Haddie shook his head. Anyway, don't you think your kids are going to hate having a really long name?
The third name will only come out if they're in big trouble, Mal said. Otherwise, it'll just be for show.
Persephone shook her head. Gods, it's almost hard to believe that May will be here before we know it. That's still your due date, right?
It is, Mal nodded. Stephanie and Maurice will be born at the end of May.
And we'll be here if you need any help, Mal promised. Same with us. Persephone nodded. I think Lucas and I go without saying. Chip chimed in. Ben chuckled. We know, and we're grateful. For all of you. And now if someone will please go and relax.
Mal smiled and gave him a gentle kiss on the cheek. Okay, she said as she stood up.
If it makes you feel any better, Mal, his father was just as bad when I was pregnant with Ben, Belle told her.
Your father was worse when I was pregnant with Haddie and Rhea, Persephone chimed in. Hades shook his head as Mal snorted fondly.
Yes, well, in terms of your pregnancy with Haddie, excuse me for being concerned about my wife while being in the realm without me. And I wasn't that bad when you were pregnant, Belle, Beast said.
You almost banned me from the library, Adam.
Well, we wouldn't have any books left if you had kept reading them.
We could have ordered more, Adam. You had already forbidden me from reading your paperwork when I was the Queen. Ben bit his lip to avoid laughing. Mal had no such restraint, however, and she had the ability to pass it off as pregnancy-related.
Beast shook his head. Belle, I didn't forbid you from reading it. You had developed a habit of reading it over my shoulder.
And what was wrong with that?
Nothing, except for when you'd point out grammatical and spelling mistakes.
So?
My spelling and grammatical mistakes, Belle. You corrected my mistakes.
You can't have mistakes on official documents, Adam. Belle shook her head and leaned over to whisper at Ben. Come on, I think they'll be like this for a while. You want to share that bath?
I think that would be a great idea,
Ben whispered back, and the two of them quietly snuck out of the room to enjoy a moment alone. After all, those moments would soon become fleeting once 2 became 4. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Oh my goodness, Mel's pregnant with twins! Ah! That makes me so happy. Oh, that was a good chapter. Nice one, Ginny, I approve. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.